Greetings one and all to another Dark Rider pony analysis. I am the Nightmare Rider, Major Mind, reminding you, as always, an even cheeseburger can be deconstructed to its original source. For whom the Sweetie Belle Toils is the third episode in a row to focus on sisterhood relationships, some of which were better than others. Dave Polsky has gone above and beyond the call of duty to show how much he has improved as a writer since the days of Feeling Pinky Keen, with this episode being no exception. It takes quite a large amount of skill as a writer to portray a protagonist as doing something that we know to be wrong while still understanding why they did so in the first place. Andrew Hussey has managed to achieve this to a large extent with Vriska Serkat in Homestuck. Vriska is, on the surface, a manipulative and spiteful troll who often picks on our so-called friend Tavros. However, the more the story goes on, the more we understand the method to her madness. We come to understand why she feels she has to do these horrible things, some things that she wishes she didn't have to do. Without going into spoilers, it should be mentioned that Vriska's actions are much more extreme and horrible than anything Sweetie Belle does, but the basic concept of understanding the point of view of a person who is doing bad things, without excusing said actions, still stands. Sweetie Belle, like any child, has a big desire to take on personal responsibility and express her independence. The entire reason she left it to the last minute to ask Rarity to help her is because she wanted to do so much of it by herself. This, and her past experience from her 5th birthday party, leads her to believe that she is being constantly overshadowed by her big sister, never getting her moment to shine based on her own talents. The episode in no way makes excuses for this action, but it does explain it to the extent that she isn't being unnecessarily cruel or bratty in doing so. Compare this to Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, who are pretty much either being malicious for the sake of malice or using other ponies as a tool to boost their own popularity. This is the only time we've seen Sweetie Belle go this far, and the whole episode is about her learning why her judgment that drove her to this action was misplaced. It is far better than if she was simply punished for her actions after the fact, since she was able to learn why her assessment of Rarity was wrong through her own eyes. Similarly, this episode realistically frames the conflict as having two sides to every story. Sweetie Belle isn't completely baseless in thinking that Rarity was deliberately overshadowing her, considering that with how much Rarity works under pressure, she can tend to overlook the feelings of other ponies, as we see in Rarity Takes Manhattan. Because Rarity is so focused on getting these dresses ready, she not only misses Sweetie Belle's play, but is also somewhat oblivious as to why Sweetie Belle is angry in the first place. This isn't done deliberately, it's just that Rarity has such huge priorities that she just doesn't have the time to focus on the conflict between her and Sweetie Belle. However, as I said before, this episode is showing how both parties are partially responsible without ever suggesting what Sweetie Belle did to the headdress was anything less than wrong. Luna is also a pony who got fantastic development during this episode. I have stated previously how princesses in Equestria are more or less mentor roles, and this is exactly what we see Luna doing. Like during Sleepless in Ponyville, she is a dream walker who senses the troubled anxieties of young ponies, helping to guide them through their dream images to face their anxieties and find their own way to overcome them. She relates to Sweetie Belle's situation, considering that her whole ascension to Nightmare Moon during the Moonrise conflict was based around her feeling jealous from being overshadowed by her older sister. She has literally been in a position where her own anxieties overwhelmed her, bringing her to the point where she did some horrible things as a result. Because of this resonance with Sweetie Belle, I suspect that Luna was particularly keen to help her avoid this path. This does bring me to my first criticism of the episode, but once again this season I have to emphasise that these critiques are relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. I felt that the narrative structure of Sweetie Belle's dream was lifted straight out of A Christmas Carol. We have visions of the past, present and future, all of which gave Sweetie Belle a full view of what the conflict is like from Rarity's point of view. This is effective in showing how much Rarity tries to show that she cares about both her sister and her job, but it doesn't really do anything new with these plot points. It makes the episode somewhat predictable, which is time that could have been used to give more details on how the mechanics of the dreamscape is supposed to work. It could have had a few clearer rules or explanations, or developed more from Rarity's point of view, rather than the reiterative narration that we got. The second problem is that I felt the vision of the future was unnecessarily extreme. Of course this would be a devastating blow to Rarity, but suggesting that it would lead her to complete mental breakdown, making her the laughingstock of the fashion world and completely internalizing her conflict to stop making dresses feels like a huge extreme to jump to. It could have perhaps built on Rarity Takes Manhattan, showing how she is still worried about Suri Polmare getting better business through dishonest tactics. Going back to the positives, this episode did a great job of adding to Apple Bloom and Scootaloo's characters, even if they are secondary to this episode. A lot of the best characterization this season has been presented through subtle jokes, like during Some Pony to Watch Over Me, when Scootaloo mentions how Applebloom does everything with sass. Here, we see Scootaloo still flapping her wings to almost maintain a hover, but not quite fully flying. Plus the joke about Sweetie Belle's differing tastes in music getting an eye roll from Applebloom and Scootaloo, as well as Applebloom's classy line. Both develop their characters by way of showing clear individual interests and aspirations beyond the simply finding their cutie marks. Seriously, Season 4, above all others, has shown that they are starting to mature into more developed characters beyond the initial purpose as simple characters for children to relate directly to. But of course, it's Sweetie Belle who has gotten the most significant development since it is her episode after all. Not just from the conflict revolving around her growing pains, but also how much she is like her sister. She shares the same attention to detail and perfectionism that Rarity does, and to an extent shares the same desire for recognition. Rarity wants her work to be recognised by top fashion idols who find her work suited to their highly exquisite tastes, but also, as Tommy Oliver pointed out, to please and entertain others through putting 110% effort into her work. We can see how much Sweetie Belle wants to make up for her misdeeds, using subtle hints from Luna to properly make peace with Rarity. She even admits that her play may not have been particularly good, so she is just happy to have an amazing sister to design dazzling costumes for her and her friends. Overall, this episode manages to transcend its narrative shortcomings with superb character development. Studying the base anxieties of a child character shows us how simple misconceptions in early life can be the basis for years of building frustration in Sweetie Belle. Princess Luna takes on the conflict case that is quite personal to her, and while perhaps we could have seen a bit more of the play like we did with the musical number during the Showstoppers, there is still just enough detail for us to see both sides of the conflict so we can relate to all participants involved, for whom the Sweetie Belle Toils gets a final grade of an A+. Until the next review, this is the Nightmare Rider, Major Mind, riding out.